Hello Geeks and Gamers, Matt Lemke here with Your Gamer Goggles, and today we have another flip through for you. This one is on the Dungeon Master's Guide for D&D Next, and it's a pretty amazing book. It starts off, it's really broken into three parts. Three parts are basically, the first two chapters are on building your world and creating your multiverse, which we're not going to spend a lot of time in. It is full of content. In fact, it's so full of content I haven't managed to work my way through it yet. As you can see, there's not a lot of art in the book. It is content heavy, but I really kind of want to delve into the second chapter, or the second part of the book, which, you know, there is some really good art in this book. You can see that there. I mean, it's really pretty amazing, and they took a change. I would say that this book is rules light. Because, well, I'll get to that here in a little bit. We're flipping through it, and the second part of the book focuses largely on creating your adventure. And the first chapter is basically about creating your outline and your story points, where to put it, dungeon, wilderness goals, the adventure climax, coming up with things of that nature. And then the second chapter is primarily about creating memorable NPCs, which will in turn heighten the world that you have created by using the first chapter, and creating NPC bonds. And they talk about how it's supposed to be consistent, that, you know, if the characters return to the same tavern, they should probably have the same barkeep. And then the fifth chapter talks primarily about different aspects of different environments and traps and things of that nature. But after that, you move into downtime, which has always been an important part to me, because it's been important in our games. Does our one game, the Rogue, is constantly researching and gathering information during downtime. So it's pretty much like a business. But where we will spend most of our time is the magic items. They have taken the random treasures, and they have done a really good job with laying it out. First thing I want to share with you, and probably one of the more important things, is the rarity chart. Goes from common to legendary, and then it lists the basic character level that it would be appropriate for as an average, and then it lists the average gold piece values. But this is a hint as to what they want to do with their game. Rarity provides a rough measure of an item's power relative to other magic items. Jump down here. If you want a ring of invisibility to fall into the hands of a first level character, so be it. No doubt, a great story will arise from that event. It tells you right there what this book is about. They couldn't have summed it up any better. If I was going to tell anybody about this book, I would say, no doubt, a great story will arise from the event. And that event is the ownership of the Dungeon Master's Guide. That pretty much sums up what I think of the book. Not to ruin the preview, we're going to keep going, because there's a lot. There's a lot more in this book, and I'm really not doing it justice because it needs a complete review. It's not a book that you can just kind of, oh, okay, boom, 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 do this and this. One of the other things I wanted to share with you is they, like you're used to, they have all these random tables for magic items, but they include special features, magic item resilience. But some of the special features are like, well, here, let's take a look at Celestial. Who created it, or who was it intended for? Celestial. The weapon is a half normal weight, inscribed with feather wings, suns and other symbols of good. Fiends find the item's presence repulsive. So you can have a +1 longsword, and if you want to add, for example, the Celestial trait to it, it gains those abilities. Or you can have what is a detail from its history. You can add a minor property. Compass, the wielder can use the action to learn which way is north, type of deal. You know, they're not all that big. And then it can have quirks and drawbacks. And then, well, let's take a look at this. This is basically on treasure. 133 to page 200, and 32 is all about putting treasure into the adventure you're creating. Now let's take another look at this. We're going to come back here to chapter 3. Your chapter on creating your adventure is probably a third to two-thirds of the book. Now we're going to move into part 3 of the book. Well, I kind of skipped some things, but it also talks about how to create artifacts and artifact properties, sentient weapons, and magic items. But we're going to move along to keep it, brief and not 30 minutes long. But chapter 8 is largely about running the game, and this goes over the rules pretty in depth, more in depth than it did in the Player's Handbook. And it talks about the roll of dice, talks about talking about metagaming in your party and table talk, the difference between character knowledge and party knowledge. Well, that's the metagaming section. But table talk talks about letting people know whether you're talking in character or as a player, which are, in my opinion, pretty important. It goes over ability scores, it goes over difficulties in classes, proficiencies, advantages, disadvantages, all the things that you would expect to be in that section. It also includes exploring a map, visibility and outdoors, social interaction, and what I think, here we go, boom, one of the most important parts of it is, well, the size chart. And yeah, it's pretty good art, I think, for the size chart. And then it goes here, and if you're playing with hex maps or square grid maps, it shows you the breakdowns for the different sizes in the game, which is pretty important to know what a beast takes up. And then it talks about improvising damage, area effects. It talks about how to, well, I already said improvising damage. It also talks about improvising ability stats and how to do it so it doesn't interrupt your game. You don't have to look up tons of rules. It talks about chases. It even includes siege equipment. It has poisons like you would expect in. Pretty cool section on going mad and how to heal somebody who's going insane. And of course, it's going to talk about experience points. But chapter 9 is the Dungeon Master's Workshop. And what this does is helps you create character backgrounds, optional rules, skill variants, things of that nature. And for example, it talks about hero points and honor points. It has action points, adventuring options, and basically what these adventuring options are, everything from how certain things like fear and horror, different types of what healing does and how it affects rest, different rest variants, alternate rules for firearms, explosives, and they even have a section on alien technology, which is pretty cool. Section on plot points and how to use them if you're telling your story. Also includes different combat options like an initiative variant. With this optional rule, creatures don't roll initiative at the start of combat. Instead, each creature has an initiative score, which is passive dexterity check 10 plus their dex modifier. So it has some interesting things. I suppose if the monsters don't have to roll initiative ever, it would speed up gameplay a little bit. And, well, here we go. One of my favorite parts of the book is creating a monster or modifying a monster, and they have guidelines for how to do that in adjusting stats, which I think is a great thing that every DM should learn to do, and I think it's great that Wizards of the Coast has put this section in here because it kind of puts a curve on metagaming, which can kind of sometimes ruin games. I have no problem frustrating a metagaming player. I have no problem making a goblin something he's not normally and frustrating that player. Like, for example, I created a goblin monk once, which is not supposed to happen, but it fit the story, so I did it. Mike Merle just wrote an interesting article on, I think the title was actually The Roll or something down that lines, and the catch line was story wins, basically. So this book, as I mentioned before, is, and here's your instructions on creating magic items. This book, as I stated before, is largely about giving the DM tools to tell a better story. And my second favorite part of the book is the random appendix, which lets you lay out dungeons, and it has everything from traps to monsters, obstacles, everything you need to create a dungeon. And then there's some really great, and we're going to zoom in here on this in a second. This section of the book is full of a lot more art. There's some really great maps. I guess I don't have to zoom in. You can see them pretty well. I think the maps in the back of this book are just beautiful. They did a really good job on these books. I think the maps have been better than they have been in the recent past. One other thing I wanted to show you that I kind of skipped over in the section on magic items. The section is really chock full of art and that describe the magic items in the book. It is just full of pictures that will help you when you need to do things for your players and give them a better description. Now, to recap real quick, or not recap, just to do a little bit of stuff. This is the random appendix section of the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's roughly 40 pages. And then we have the section on the Dungeon Master's Workshop and how to round out your adventure. Then we have the section on the rules, and this is what I want to show you. This is going to reinforce the point that story is first in a role-playing game. There you go. That is where the D&D team talks about the rules. Page 235 to 263, about 30 pages of this book are basically about the rules. The rest of the book is about optional rules to help your storyline move forward and make your game to the flavor you want it to be. The first 233 pages of the book are about designing your world. In other words, you're creating a character, which is, 70 pages-ish. 68 pages. So from 60 to 235 is all about creating an adventure. Now, admittedly, a great deal of that is the magic item section, which you it's fantasy setting. You're not going to get away from it. You're just not. That section of the book is roughly 100 pages. So from 68 to 130, 70 pages of the book is on how to create a memorable adventure and tell the story of that adventure within your game world. So the Dungeon Master's Guide, in my opinion, is unlike several of the other Dungeon Master's Guides that have been out there that have focused largely on the rules. They have shifted from the rules focus of the Dungeon Master's Guide. I mean, the Dungeon Master is still the referee. He is still the arbitrator of the rules. But they're changing the focus from raw to story, in my opinion. And that is why I think that this book is a good book for any GM/Dungeon Master, because, well, you can use a lot of what they have in this book for any game system. It doesn't matter if it's a fantasy setting or if it's a science fiction setting, a pulp horror setting, cyberpunk setting. It's a tool, and it's a really good tool. I love to write. I'm working on a novel. I've written several short stories in my life, and a lot of these things go back to things that I've been taught by authors like Mike Stackpole, John Helfers, Mark Tassin, Gene Raby, some of the other names that are escaping. Oh, Matt Forbeck has mentioned some of the concepts that are in this book. And even, going back to my high school teacher when I took my first creative writing course, she talks about plot points and things of that nature. Hook, line, and sinker is what we called it. But, it's a really good book for any storyteller. Thanks for watching. This has been my flip through on the Dungeon Master's Guide for D&D 5th Ed. I would like to invite you to join us for everything we do. Every Thursday is role-playing game day. If we don't have anything scheduled, we'll have something posted on our blog to let you know. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.